In 1889 came the Hanafuda cards. Later, when the cards became more popular, they started using characters such as Disney characters for children, having a boom in the card department. Obviously, you want to cater to the kids, and you'd be able to get more of a revenue from that. And the Mario Hanafuda cards became available on Nintendo's site via Club Nintendo for 800 points. It was a little online service they did where you can redeem things for points of games you bought. And in Japan, originally, playing cards were banned because of multiple aspects of Western culture illegal due to Christian missionaries. But in the late 1800s, the ban was lifted, which made them a lot happy. During the ban, the Japanese decided to develop an alternative to playing cards, which was called Hanafuda. Then after the ban, Nintendo started distributing the cards. Because after the ban lifted, they were able to distribute them because at the time they were banned due to the Western influence. Hanafuda reveals many seasonal motifs and combination designs considered to be harmonious in Japanese culture. Similar motifs are portrayed in a wide range of crafts including ceramics, textiles, and utensils used for tea ceremonies, relating it to their culture. And Hanafuda also helps identify Japanese culture along with nature. Most of the cards portraying nature, such as birds or trees or leaves. In 1977, the Color TV game came out, which was inspired by Space Invaders from Taito to give a try at video games at home, and it resulted in this. Most people usually think that the NES or the Game & Watch was the first, when it was the Color Game TV. It released during the 1973 oil crisis, making toys during the time too expensive. So they had another reason to try the video game market, which was a very good move on their end, obviously, because it's the Nintendo we all know today, because of that. In 1980, the Game & Watch released, which was a series of handheld electronics which came in many different colors and variations of different games. In later installments, they had clocks and alarms, which is pretty much an early version of the DS in a way. And Nintendo still references the Game & Watch to this day, such as adding a character from the Game & Watch and even re-releasing a Game & Watch for the Year of Mario. In Smash Bros, there is this character named Game & Watch, and he had to get something removed because of a racist stereotype with Native Americans, thus creating a whole commotion, and they did remove the feather upon release because it caused outbursts on Twitter and more. In 1983, the Famicom released, and it had 3 ports of famous arcade games, which were Popeye, Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong Jr., and later they released Mario Brothers, which Mario became the mascot after that, and became one of the best-selling games and is still highly respected and popular to this day. In Japan, they had mics on their controllers and many exclusive games that the US did not get. While also, in Japan, many Famicoms had a faulty circuit, and many of them had to be recalled by Nintendo, making a lot of consumers mad. In 1989, the Game Boy released, and it had a green pixel color palette unlike most other consoles, which had colors, which threw people off. The Game Boy was hugely popular, and the game that helped with it was Tetris, which boosted sales by millions and became a cultural phenomenon. The Game Boy was very popular in schools and were often taken away during class because students were obsessed with them. And what helped it even more is you were able to play with each other with a link cable, which was not really a thing heard of at the time, or as popular until the Game Boy released. In 1991, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System released, and the games that launched with the system were all well received, such as Super Mario World, F-Zero, and Pilot Wings, which are all very popular to this day. There was a huge bit war between Sega Genesis and the SNES, which caused lots of competition among who owned what, and what games a person owned, often getting into fights. And there were commercial wars against companies, sometimes against people who liked either or, and making fun of if you liked it or not. And they recently released an SNES Mini, which is a mini variant having 80 built-in games, showing that people still care for the older generation of games. The bit war was around this age, which was consisting of Nintendo releasing the SNES to compete with the Sega Genesis, because at the time, they had the NES out, which was only 8-bit. More bits meant more people would buy it. The bigger the bits, the better. The more bits, at the time, it mattered a lot to people. 8-bit, 16-bit, the bigger the better. Nintendo and Sega often took shots at each other in form of commercials, such as Sega throwing out a Nintendo in the garbage in one of the examples of a commercial, with the Sega Genesis being 16-bit while the NES was 8-bit, causing huge debates of which was better. A popular phrase back then from Sega was that Sega does when the 10 don't, meaning that Sega has better because they had better bits. They had wars between what launched with each system, such as Sega packaging it with a $50 game, and Nintendo doing the same. Fans bickered amongst one another which was the best, because they wanted to know which was the best one indeed. And Sega added add-ons to their consoles while Nintendo had them built in, making Nintendo become more superior, but it was a huge example of bit wars and was a very interesting war between two companies. In 1995, the Virtual Boy released, panned by critics as a commercial failure, even with Nintendo dropping the price a lot. The reason for failure is because of a high price, and the design was unappealing, and was just a red and black eyesore. It was one of the worst Nintendo consoles, getting discontinued in a year after release, while with having tons of unreleased games. The red and black color scheme, when being stared at too long, made people's vision mess up and caused huge eye strain, which was another reason it failed and got taken off shelves as well, because a lot of people complained about it. In 1996, the Nintendo 64 released, which was the first 3D Nintendo console, and it was critically acclaimed at launch, and still is one of the most popular and well-respected, along with being well-known console. Super Mario 64 paved the way for movement in video games, along with the Nintendo 64 analog stick paved the way for the future consoles with analog controls. The Nintendo 64 was going to get an add-on, the Nintendo 64 disk drive, which did release in Japan but was cancelled here due to commercial failure and low sales there. And it was the world's first 64-bit system. When it came out, thousands lined up to try it because it was something new. In 2001, the GameCube released, which was the first Nintendo console to use laserdiscs instead of cartridges. The GameCube was special because it linked to another console with some games, such as The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords. Having it both be on the Game Boy and the GameCube, you can link the game together and play from the GameCube to the Game Boy, which was very unique at the time, and was also one of the first Nintendo consoles to have online support, even releasing with a GameCube keyboard controller. The GameCube is most known for its controller to this day and is used often in esports tournaments and more, and even amongst Nintendo fans, most popular with Smash Bros. And it is just still, and even on the Wii they had ports for the GameCube controllers because of how many people loved the design. The GameCube controller is still popular to this day because of the design choice and simplicity of it. People have often argued it's one of the best made controllers ever. It's popular in esports to this day, specifically in Smash tournaments and more, but is still a fan favorite among if not a lot of games. It's nice and easy to use, along with being easy to hold. It has nice and tight grips, and it just feels nice in your hands. It has no input problems, a lot of people say whenever they play any game with it. The button layout of it, a lot of people said, is a very nice and very comfortable feel. And it's still being sold and used with current gen Nintendo systems. It's been requested so much to be added for the Wii U and Switch that they added a GameCube port for it. That's how popular it is to this day, and always will be. In 2004, the Nintendo DS came out, which was a sequel to the Game Boy, but was referenced originally from the Game & Watch. It was a console that started the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, which is Nintendo's own Wi-Fi network, which people can play and battle and solve on with each other that have a Nintendo console, and is still used to this day. Some of it being cancelled, but brought onto the Switch and more. It was the first Nintendo console to have a multi-platform structure. It could play Game Boy Advance games, as well as making it more worth it to those who had a Game Boy Advance. The GameCube and the SNES did have Game Boy players, but you had to buy those. The DS, you bought it, and you're able to play Game Boy and DS games right away. The DS brought parental controls because of all the problems with online gaming, which is for younger kids. You heard a lot of such as kids had to beware of pedophiles and more on the internet, which was prevalent in one Nintendo DS game. So parents got skeptical, and Nintendo added a parental feature so then they wouldn't have to worry. In 2006, the Nintendo Wii released, which was extremely popular when released and was in short supply when launched, which was a problem for many people. It released with the game, which was Wii Sports, which was very, very popular, and often was the reason people bought a Wii in the first place. Even with the Wii coming out, even with the Wii being released, people still wanted to get it because of it, especially people of the older generation. It was the first Nintendo console with motion controls and sensors. Such as, for example, in Wii Sports with golf, you can swing your Wii remote and it would hit the ball. Or for racing games, you can tilt your controller. The Wii was trying to also persuade women because whenever you think of video games back in the day, it was mostly catered towards males only. And also, Nintendo wanted to hit those demographic marks as well since they weren't being catered to. And other companies often cringed at the idea, but it turned out to be super successful in the end for Nintendo. In 2011, Nintendo 3DS came out. In less than 6 months, they did a price reduction because of the poor launch sales. And people bought it more when it was in low price. People thought it was just another DS with a gimmick. Basically, the reason why the Wii U didn't do as well and such is because they thought it was just another DS, run-of-the-mill. It featured 3D gameplay, which was very unique at the time, and it still is to this day. The 3DS is also multi-platform, being able to play older DS games, and its online service is still being able to be played online to this day. Unfortunately, with the DSs, it shut down. The 3D was an option. Not many people were fond of because of the headaches and dizziness. And also, it was very disorienting. And people complained about it a lot. And nobody ever used it. Thus why they made a 2DS, which is a version without the 3D, because people just did not like it. The name 3DS often threw parents in the wrong direction, thinking they're gonna buy their kid Super Mario, but it's for the 3DS. Most parents get confused between the DS and 3DS. Some games are only able to be played on the 3DS, and which sometimes parents buy a 3DS game while their son on the DS because they don't know the difference. Which is a reason why it also probably didn't do as great, but it still did great, if that makes sense. In 2012, the Nintendo Wii U released. People thought the Wii U was an add-on of the Wii, and did not buy it. And when it was released, the reviews and outlook were mixed. Many people complained because they thought of it being portable, and having the same name as the Wii. Whenever I first bought my Wii U, I thought I'd be able to bring it outside, only for you to not be able to, which was very disappointing indeed. It was also the first Nintendo console to feature HD graphics, which was a step up because Nintendo needed to catch up because everyone had high definition while they didn't. Some of the games required having the TV and gamepad on, while some just let you use the gamepad, or vice versa. People complained about it because sometimes you had to play with the TV on, and the Wii U on, which sometimes parents were watching games and stuff. Because usually when you bought the Wii U, you'd think you'd be able to play every game on the gamepad. Unfortunately, you weren't able to. Especially, the big example being Splatoon. You had to have the TV on for that game. The Wii U also barely had any third-party support. Thus another reason it was the second worst Nintendo console to date. Not selling well and doing terribly because of it. In 2017, the Nintendo Switch launched, which is the most recent Nintendo console, which is a mix of a portable console and a console to play at home. And it was very popular at launch, making it very hard for people to get until later. They had a very bad shortage of systems, and even had for a while, even during COVID, it was hard to get a Switch. So they're still sort of in high demand, but not as much as they used to be. It was pretty much the thought of what the Wii U was going to be, a portable console. The system is still super strong to this day, and is slowly becoming one of Nintendo's best-selling consoles because of its unique hybrid ability of being able to play a lot of games which you can only play at home on the go. One issue is that people are complaining about the controllers, which have this thing called drift, which the controller moves automatically, sometimes making the player mess up, which is a huge problem, and often people had to get their Joy-Cons sent to Nintendo to get them fixed. Me also, having experienced it with my controllers, was very rough. To this day, Nintendo is still beloved by both adults and kids of all ages. Nintendo has helped game companies such as Microsoft and Sony become giants thanks to their roots, because of its major influence during the video game crash of 1983. If it wasn't for Nintendo, and if they wouldn't have gotten video games popular again during that time, video games probably still wouldn't be as popular or as influential as they are, thanks to Nintendo during the crash, because a lot of people didn't want to make video games after they were doing so poorly. And also, Nintendo is one of the most popular video game companies still to this day, and will be for a very long time, being very respectable and iconic. Their history having ups and downs along the way, but being very successful at the end of the day. To be successful in business, you need to have failure, which Nintendo has had. but that's what makes them shine more and makes it more realistic. And they will stay prevalent and super iconic for a very long time to come.